my big reason for leaving is a very, very close friend of mine who I would consider like a blood brother. Like we're very, very close. He was disfellowshipped, and I didn't feel like there was very sound reasoning behind it. And I remember bringing it up to the elders, and all they would say is, "You better be careful." I'm like, "Be careful with what?" And they're like, "Be careful how you talk about the elders and their decision making." And that was like an immediate, like, all right, I don't believe anything they're telling me, and I don't trust them.
This is Seeds of Awakening, your home for higher frequency religious and spiritual conversations. I'm your host, Amani Channel, and my guest today says the hardest part about being a Jehovah's Witness is having to turn your back on your friends and family who no longer believe in the faith. The shunning is the hardest part, and I'll bring him in just a second, but first make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, smash the like. That's the easiest way you can pay it forward. Do it now if you like this kind of content. So I'm bringing the guest. His name is Marshall McNiff, and he says it's hard as heck to shun friends and family who no longer share in your beliefs when it comes to being a Jehovah's Witness. All right, so Marshall McNiff is in the house. He's was a former Jehovah's Witness. Going to share his story with us now. Marshall, where are you from, and how are you raised?
I was born in Michigan, Midwest, raised in what you'd think was a pretty standard family. Both parents, and both of them were sort of raised into the organization. Both their mothers studied when they were young, so they're brought into it. So both my parents were witnesses, and they raised me and my three siblings as Jehovah's Witnesses.
So were you pretty much born in it, or were you kind of raised in it? What was your situation?
I was born in, yeah.
And so what was life like for you growing up?
It was interesting. There weren't a lot of other Jehovah's Witnesses my age in town. We went to a small congregation. As far as, I think they usually do like a publisher count for how many people were consistently going to like the Kingdom Hall, right? I think it was usually around like 100 publishers. So kind of a smaller congregation, usually on the lower end, like 80 something people. Not a lot of people my age. So when I was going to school, especially, there were none of the other students were witnesses. So I was the only one. And that made it pretty difficult, especially with like saluting the flag in America here. That's a big deal, as I'm sure it is in other countries too. Like national pride is a big deal, and that's a big no-no. Birthdays and holidays, obviously, that made a big difference. None of that bothered me so much. The religious part of it didn't start bothering me till later in life, but it definitely had its challenges for sure. Yeah.
So what in your teenage years were you baptized, and what age were you baptized?
Oh, let's see. So I was baptized, I think the winter of 2012. I don't remember how old I was. I want to say I was, teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember being cold because you get baptized, you go in the water, you come out, and it's like, man, it's like 30 degrees.
So was your family devout? Were they going to every meeting, and were you going out and field service and doing the whole deal?
Oh yeah, very devout. Yes, absolutely.
So at one point, do you start having cracks in your beliefs?
Definitely when COVID happened, that was the big one. But honestly, I would say once I started to really hit my teenage years, I started to ask a lot of questions, and I realized that no one was willing to answer a lot of those questions. And I think the way the elders handled a lot of situations around me, including a couple of my own, you start to see a lot of the issues with the arrangement of the elders and the congregation.
Do you have any specific examples?
Yeah, there's one that always, I won't mention any names just out of respect for the people involved. I remember one situation that was kind of interesting. When I was a teenager, definitely the internet is not the best place for younger people, right? But I don't think I ever got into a lot of trouble with that. But I remember on social media, I would just post or repost things that I enjoyed. And there were YouTube videos that had a thumbnail that was apparently provocative, even though the video was not. And I remember the elders sat me down, and their reasoning for it was, their reasoning for not actually watching the video to see what the content of it was. One of the elders said, it's like, well, when you see the Bible, you should know it's in the Bible. You can judge a book by its cover. But the saying is you can't judge a book by its cover. It's a it's an interesting game that they play. They will do everything they can to make themselves seem right 100% of the time, and uh, they'll they'll make you believe it for sure. They'll do everything they can to make you believe that they're the ones that are in the right.
So, is your growing up, were there any doctrinal issues that you had questions about, like the 144,000, the governing bodies? Do you have any questions about their authority?
Um, it wasn't until I left that I actually had issues with the teachings. I honestly could have cared less. It was my issues were with how they handled disfellowshipping. That was my big reason for leaving. Is a very, very close friend of mine who I would consider like a blood brother. Like we're very, very close. He was disfellowshipped, and I didn't feel like there was very sound reasoning behind it. And I remember bringing it up to the elders, and all they would say is, "You better be careful." I'm like, "Be careful with what?" And they're like, "Be careful how you talk about the elders and their decision making." And that was like an immediate, like, all right, I don't believe anything they're telling me, and I don't trust them. Um, that's just a wild thing to say, and the way that they handled his situation was just very unjust. Um, yeah, I just didn't agree with any of it. Uh, yeah, that was more so around that. My issues were more so around the way they handled a lot of things within the congregation, how they treated people.
Gosh, so more just like a personal kind of personal relationship kind of issues that you have with the elders.
Yeah.
Gosh, so at what point did you finally walk away from the organization?
Well, there's a point where I think I was kind of playing mental emotional tug of war, where I wanted to leave a number of years ago. I left honestly not that long ago, like over a year ago now. So
Mhm.
25 years I was in, I've been out for over a year, but I was mentally out for a long time. I would say the last like several years I was mentally out, but I finally left when I kind of hit like a breaking point where I didn't want to leave because I didn't want to upset my family, because there was sort of my siblings are much older than me. My oldest brother was disfellowshipped. So I kind of saw how that went down. I didn't want to be number two.
Mhm.
You know how that can kind of play out that way. I didn't want to upset my family further or be like a reason that people look down on my family because they're devout. But I also was um, it, in my way of kind of coping with not really wanting to be a Jehovah's Witness, but trying to make it work for the sake of my family. My way of dealing with that was alcohol and pills. And I don't think that's uncommon, as I've heard from other people. Substance abuse runs pretty strong um, for the people that are kind of in limbo. And I kind of reached a point where I drank a whole bottle of whiskey and took a handful of pills just to sleep one night. And I'm like, I'm going to end up killing myself if I don't step away from this. But even bringing that to the elders and then later to my family, it wasn't enough for them. A few of my family members called me selfish for wanting to leave. Yeah. So that was a tough one.
So you kind of turned to alcohol and drugs to kind of suppress your pain. Is that kind of what happened, or your disdain for the organization? You're trying to get disfellowshipped. Is that what happened?
I didn't get disfellowshipped. I just left. I kind of made the decision to just leave. Um, but yeah, I definitely was like suppressing that, those feelings of like, am I do, like, I guess, as far as like
It was more just like destructive behavior, kind of, sort of.
yeah, it turned into destructive behavior, trying to kind of cope with those feelings of, I know I'm not doing the right thing, but I don't want to just leave. But that ended up being the best choice I could have made, honestly.
So you're a PMO for several years because you were kind of going for your family's sake. How'd you end up fading out, or what'd you end up doing to get out of the organization?
So initially, I had a lot of issues with anxiety, and I was on medications for that. And I would kind of use that as an excuse to step down from responsibilities, or what they would call responsibility. You're essentially doing free labor. It has that kind of plays out. But, when it comes to stuff during the meetings, running microphones,
Hmm.
or even just the furthest I ever really got as far as that whole like social club part of that goes, I gave like Bible readings and talks. I never became a ministerial servant. Never bothered with that. I kind of used I think years ago, I kind of knew that it really wasn't for me. So I would use my anxiety as a way to take a step back from what they call the responsibilities of that, and take less on. So that way I could kind of keep a distance.
So you kind of used that to kind of separate yourself from the organization, kind of take a break. That's what I found a lot of people end up doing.
Yeah, for sure.
And let me ask you this: during COVID, what was it about COVID that kind of woke you up or made you realize it was time to leave, or that sort of thing?
It was a number of things. I think it was the way the governing body reacted to it. Obviously, no one was prepared for COVID, so that was a big wake up call, because they kind of were silent for a while. And then they started to double down on the end of times prophecies once they kind of got their heads together. But it took them a minute.
Hmm.
And as we can see, the end of time still hasn't shown up yet.
Right. I don't know if it's going to show up at all.
So that was a part of it. But also, this is something that I don't know if anyone else that you'll interview experienced this. This is kind of interesting. I remember when that happened, we weren't allowed to go to the Kingdom Hall here. That was restricted. So we ended up meeting in each other's basements to do the meetings, which was really interesting. And it felt like one of those videos that they would put out, like, this is what the end times are going to be like, right? And everyone was kind of in that anxious state of like, is this it? Is this like, part of Armageddon? And it didn't take but like a week, and it was like, all right, obviously this is, and there's history has kind of shown that these kind of things have come up before with diseases. It happens. So it's definitely not the end of the world, but the way that everyone reacted to it, and then the way it just kind of piddle paddled out, like it just didn't turn into anything, definitely had that sense of like, is this real?
Mhm.
You know? So yeah, there were a number of things like that that just kind of stood out to me and started to wake me up.
So did you send in a letter to disassociate yourself? So I can't say it.
No, I didn't send a letter. I didn't even know that that was a thing until after I left. I kind of looking into the online communities and whatnot, when people have mentioned that they would send in their letter, I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought I just stayed local. So yeah, that's an interesting thing that I actually learned after leaving.
So what you do to kind of let your family know that you were kind of going different directions? You would tell them actually that you were no longer interested, or how'd you end up breaking into them?
I brought it to my dad first because he's the most patient, and I still have no lack of respect for him. Like he's definitely a great man, and I feel bad that he's kind of stuck inside of this, like this trap. Um, so I told him first because I knew that he would handle it the best, and I would let him kind of disperse the information. But I ended up calling a few other family members that weren't local, like where I live, and let them know. But I remember there was some turmoil there, though, with my oldest sister and my mother for a brief moment with my mother. She came to terms with it pretty quick. I'm not on good terms with either of my sisters. Me and my brother now have a good relationship because he's been out for 20 something years.
Mhm.
So we've been able to reconvene and get to know each other, and that's been great. But yeah, now I basically lost contact with both of my sisters entirely. But our parents have sort of come around, and they're letting us have like minimal contact. We've been helping them out with stuff around the house, and I'm just kind of happy to be able to help them because they're older. And that was my reason for not really wanting to leave, was because I knew that they were going to need help, and my other siblings weren't going to be able to do that. So, and I think they probably see that too.
So you're able to have some sort of relationship with your parents at least.
I do. At least I at least have something. Yeah,
Mhm.
it took about 6 months though. It took about 6 months to even hear from them. I let them reach out to me. Um, I just tried to be respectful about it and not push for contacts or reach out for it because I already knew how witnesses were going to be about it. So it is, I guess you could say it's a blessing, ironically,
So
to
did
have
the,
that contact.
yeah, so did the elders reach out to you as you were kind of fading away, or did they try to get you to stay or anything like that?
So that's the interesting part. I talked to the elders first, and I planned it. I planned it. It was a Sunday. I showed up halfway through a meeting. They didn't know I was drunk, but I definitely was. I was not having a good time. And I just kind of laid it out to them, like I can't keep doing this. It's creating destructive uh, habits. Trying to deal with not really fitting into this organization or this religion, and not really believing it either. But it's that ties to the family and friends that really hold you there. And I just kind of had to cut the cord essentially, and that's what I did that day. I cut the rope and let go of all that.
So have you continued to use alcohol and pills, or kind of have you moved on from that as well?
I've been able to get away from it. Yep.
And do you attribute that
Yep.
to you leaving the organization?
I do. Yeah.
So how does it feel like having being clean and sober, having the Jehovah's Witnesses out of your life now, kind of being a independent person, having a relationship with your brother? What's life like now for you?
Even though the last year's had its serious challenges and a lot of things have happened, this is, I think, the happiest I've ever been, believe it or not. Uh, there's a lot of things that come out of leaving that aren't great, but the it was like a huge release, like a weight off my shoulders to be able to get away from that. It was massive. It was so noticeable.
What have you learned about the organization since you've left?
A lot of things. I mean, the one thing that I was picking up on while I was still in was the child abuse thing, and that really bothered me. Now that I've gotten out, I didn't realize how deep that went, that there's hidden records that the governing body are trying to keep from the government, and the governments around the world are fighting to get those records. That I didn't know was going on. That's an interesting one. There's a lot of things about the history of the Jehovah's Witnesses that I've learned about that after leaving, that I kind of realized that the modern governing body have been kind of covering up a lot of the history because it doesn't make them look good.
Mhm.
So learning the complete history has been really interesting too. Um, yeah, there's a number of things I guess, like smaller things I picked up on, but one thing I've noticed is that when you're in the organization, everyone that has a problem with the witnesses is an apostate to them, like an enemy. Now that I'm out, you definitely have the complainers. They feel like they were burned and they're just kind of lashing out. But I've also seen where there are people who are calm and collected. And there's someone that I think this website's been up for a long time now, but jwfacts.com was a big help for me to kind of have that realization like leaving was a good idea. Like and that website basically takes all the negative things about the organization that are factual and are well documented, especially legal documents, and it just it lays it out for you. And that was huge in helping me to kind of move past that, making good terms with my decision, right? Kind of doubling down on leaving. Like that was a good idea.
As you've kind of learned this information, have you tried to like inform or educate your parents or your family members about some of the red flags that you found?
I haven't, because that can be very tricky. And I know that has gone wrong for a lot of different people. So I talk about it with my brother a lot because me and my brother are on the same page. We feel the same way about the organization and kind of religion in general. And it's sad to say I kind of gotten to a point with religion where I don't really care. Like I can kind of do without it. And he's kind of the same way, but trying to just take like the facts and bring that to like our father's attention. He'd be the first one that would probably be able to handle it, but the difficulty there is that they're so programmed to resist that. It's very difficult to break down that wall. So that's something that me and my brother talk about a lot. Maybe in the future that might be a possibility, but right now it's a little tricky.
Talk about your beliefs now. Do you believe in God? Are you a spiritual or religious person at all? You said that you kind of don't trust religion.
I don't. No, I honestly, I really appreciate the words of the original founder of the Witnesses. There's a picture of him holding a sign that says religion, underlined, bold. Religion is a snare and a racket. He didn't start a religion, he just started a group of Bible students and it turned into a cult. So he was on the right path. And then somebody, after he passed away, took it in a different direction. So I agree with that statement. That religion, I think, is it's a snare and a racket for sure.
Mm.
Not sometimes, I understand that there's good things that can come out of it. Like a lot of religions have, and this is something the witnesses should have gotten with the times with when it comes to helping the homeless, helping people in need. They really fell flat on that, and it doesn't make them look good. But like there are some good things that can come out of religion, but as the teachings go and whatnot, I think it's less about who's right and what have we lost in translation over centuries. I think that I don't believe that anyone has the right translation. I think it's all interpretation.
Mm.
Everyone has
Mhm.
a different interpretation. So I think something's been lost over hundreds and hundreds of years that I don't think we'll ever get back. Um,
Yes, like everyone has their
but
own interpretation. They think they're right, and who knows
yeah,
if they are or not.
right. Yeah, witnesses are known for they don't like to say it publicly, which is interesting. They won't stand up for what they believe publicly when it comes to that, but they think that they have the truth and no one else does.
So, what made you start your YouTube channel and talk a little bit about that?
It I think it started when I was starting to hear from my parents again, because I think the second video was like an update when I finally was able to uh, have some sort of contact with them and how that was going. But that first video was almost like that last little bit of weight I needed to take off of my chest. It was more of a rant, but it was just kind of laying out like how I felt about the situation and why I left, and kind of laying out some of the things that have happened after the fact. And I thought it might have been good for other people to hear, and then not realizing that the community has been growing in the background, and I had no idea. And so now I've kind of become a part of that, which is kind of cool.
The XJW community.
Yeah.
Yeah, same with me. I had no idea that there was this kind of movement online, but it's kind of interesting to see how people have reacted to the governing body and all the changes, like the beard policy, the toasting, and all of that. It's a lot of it's definitely eye-opening. All the folks that are leaving the organization, definitely.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah, I kind of noticed being in, you do kind of notice a pattern of people leaving, but you don't really know the scale of it. And it's
Mm.
funny enough, being outside of the organization, you start to see the scale of it. There's a lot of people leaving. And I think, for good reason too. But and I know that you don't want to be cynical and be like, oh, good for them, and screw that religion. But it's definitely good to see people kind of coming to their senses and being able to think for themselves, because it's something that that organization does not want you to do, and it's detrimental.
You said the
Yeah.
C word, you said cult, the cult word. So you definitely believe that there's some manipulation involved and some groupthink involved.
Oh yeah. Big time. That I noticed that while inside, and I remember talking to my dad about that. Like, why does everyone act the same? Why does nobody uh, ask questions? Why is everyone on the same kind of plane of thinking? And he would never really give me an answer. Um, but I noticed that early on, and I definitely have noticed it now, because this is how deep it's entrenched in everyone. I don't know what my announcement was, so I wasn't properly disfellowshipped. I decided not to show up to my judicial committee. They were still doing the judicial committee thing at the time. Now they call
Mhm.
it something different, right? But
I think they call it being removed or something like that. They don't call it
I
disfellowship. They call it being
so I
removed.
yeah, I think they call it being removed. I think the way I didn't hear the announcement, I decided not to show up. I just wanted to move on and move forward. But I think the way it was phrased was like, so and so is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses, or
Mhm.
essentially choosing not to be. I think that's how mine was phrased. But even though it wasn't an outright disfellowshipping or removal, I stopped receiving calls and text, and everybody cut me off that night.
Wow.
As soon as the meeting ended, that meeting with that announcement, didn't hear from anyone in the congregation after that. Not anything since. Yeah, it was wild.
How'd that make you feel?
Um, I can see where it could ruin a person having that happen to them. I was in an odd position where I was kind of half in, half out all the way around. You could say I was definitely living a double life, in the sense that I was hanging out with disfellowship people that I still had a good relationship with. Because what they did isn't socially unacceptable. It's just not acceptable to the organization. So uh, I kept relationships with people that left or were removed. And so I even had, like, what you'd say, like, I had worldly friends at the time.
Mhm.
And there's a little bit of family I have that aren't involved in the organization. So like it didn't take me that much to just take that step. And I guess the way I looked at it, right out of the gate, as soon as that situation happened, when everyone cut me off, the way I saw it was, if any of them are real friends, they're not going to cut me off. because I wouldn't cut anyone off that I really cared about. And I guess you could say that it should be kind of heartbreaking that it's like nobody, not a single person. But I almost didn't care as much as maybe I could have or should have, because it was everything started to feel pretty fake. Like the relationships that I had inside of the organization started to come apart, like they weren't even real, right? It was like it was all a facade. That's how it felt.
Gotcha. So what do you do now? You basically have relationships with your family members who aren't witnesses, with your disfellowship brother and other, I guess, former witnesses, and you have a social circle, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a social circle, and then uh, what also helped me too was leaving my apartment I was in and changing jobs just to completely get away from that, that era of
Mhm.
my life, I guess. That definitely helped. And you meet new people along the way. And I've never had a problem talking to everyday people, like regular people. And that's something I never got that's something that always kind of bothered me about the witnesses is they treat what they call worldly people as like lesser than people. And I've never had that view. I've never understood that. So I've never had an issue just talking to people like a normal human being. So it definitely wasn't a big issue socially to leave,
So
thankfully.
so
So
there wasn't a lot of deconstruction that you had to do with the religion, or you had to like sort of unbrainwash yourself after you left. You kind of were already on that path, it sounds like.
for sure, yeah, there wasn't much. Yeah, like you said, de-brainwashing is a good term. There wasn't much that I really had to do to separate myself from it. It was almost kind of instant, to be honest with you, which is interesting. I don't think everyone's going to be different, and it depends how indoctrinated everyone is. But I guess I must have been that separated from it that it really didn't take much to just take that next step. So that part of it wasn't so painful. That was pretty painless. It was just dealing with those relationships that kind of disintegrated.
Well, I'm glad that things have worked out for you. Glad you're in a good headspace now. Good you quit the drugs and alcohol. That's congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yes, so I have some frequent questions that I like to ask all my guests. I kind of modify them for our own conversation here. But how would you define, I guess, an awakening within the Joel's Witness organization? How would you define an awakening? How would you explain to somebody?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think you can almost feel that. It's almost something you can feel. It's after hearing a little bit of knowledge, hearing the actual truth about the organization or the teachings. It doesn't take much to plant that seed, and then it starts to make you think and rethink everything that everything that's been kind of like just pounded into you from the stage over the years, because they'll just hit you with the same information. It's a lot of regurgitated stuff. So you'll start to question that after hearing something. And it's almost like something that it's kind of an anxious feeling, but you just kind of know, like, something isn't right.
Like a
That's,
gut feeling, maybe? Like a gut feeling?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely like a gut feeling. You can just everything just starts to crumble around you, and you just have to kind of hang in there.
So next question is, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in life so far?
Another great question. Oh man. Uh, don't put on your credit cards what you can't pay back. No, um, as far as like life lessons go, I, I think something important that might help people is, how should I phrase it? Phrasing is always the difficult part with those, right? Uh, I think a very important thing for people to keep in mind. is that you'll kind of know when someone's a good friend and you want to do everything you can to keep them around. Because just like my situation, it only takes one thing said from a stage, and all of a sudden, like what seems like a big circle of this big community around you, it could disappear overnight. So keep the real people around you and don't let them go.
Mm. I like the lesson, definitely. All right, last question. What would be your advice to another witness who might be questioning things? Maybe they're starting to doubt a little bit. What would be your advice to them? How should they go about?
Mm. I would say don't bring it up to the elders right away. Because it seems to be where it goes wrong for a lot of people. But I would, doing your research is always important. I think anytime you have doubts about something, it's good to just do your research and solidify it. Make sure that you're kind of grounding yourself and not just going crazy with it. Because there's definitely rumors about the organization, but there's also some serious things. There's some serious issues with it. So like jwfacts.com is a great resource for people that are not quite sure, but they kind of want to just, it's, it's good to just do that research and just, what's a good term for that? Just to solidify it for yourself. So, make sure you have a strong base for yourself. Create a strong base of knowledge, I guess. And that'll help you to make that decision down the road when you want to leave. It'll make it so much easier because what is the truth at that point.
Do you have any words let's say you're speaking to an ex-JW, somebody who knew you from the Kingdom Hall, would you have any message for them?
That's kind of why I started that YouTube channel, because I know that there are witnesses that are subscribed to that YouTube channel from a long time ago, before it became what it is now. So I guess if there's anything else to tell them, I would have to say, it's a tricky one. That's a tough question. Because it's like, what else is there to say? Because they definitely don't give you a platform to say it. But I wish that people would have that second thought. Because there's a lot of people that I know it was instant for them to just abandon their brother, so to speak. And I wish that people would have that second thought and kind of reconsider what they're into, whether they were born in or they were studied with and recruited, so to speak. I guess that's all I wish that I could tell them. It's like it'd be nice if they could kind of think about that situation and think about the other factors, because they're looking at it from a very boxed in point of view.
Mm-hmm. Very controlled point of view, definitely. All right, so
Yeah.
Marshall, if someone wants to visit your YouTube channel or check out your videos, where should they go?
Apparently Apostate is the YouTube channel, and that's kind of the only place that I talk about this. Otherwise, me and my brother started a construction company. We're just getting off the ground, North Oak Construction. So I think it's like northoak.us. We're just getting that going, but that's kind of a more local. But that's been a fun experience, kind of working through the process of that, and getting to do carpentry. So yeah, it's a good time.
Well, good luck on all the future ventures. Hopefully the business takes off, and much success to you in the future.
I appreciate it. Thank you.